The Shadow, a Warrior Series Short Story, Book 3. By Patterson. Chapter 1. Down, Bear yelled, and dove at the portly man beside him. His momentum carried the two of them behind their SUV, just as a hail of bullets cut the air where they had been standing. He lay on top of his principal, shielding him with his 6'5" frame, and drew his Glock as more rounds buried themselves in the vehicle's frame. A couple of people had taken shelter along with them, one of them, an elderly woman. She was sobbing quietly as screams and shouts filled the air. The principal was moaning softly, his sound muffled, and Bear could feel him trembling beneath him. He peered cautiously beneath the vehicle, but all he could make out were the wheels of a silver sedan, crawling slowly, as the shooters pumped bullets in their direction. Traffic had screeched to a halt at the sound of gunfire, and everyone on the busy North Genesee Avenue had ducked, sought cover, or had dropped to the ground. Bear scoped his left and right. No shooters were approaching. Other than the people hugging the ground, no human was in sight. Behind him was the concrete wall of the hotel they had emerged from. A drive-by shooting. They can't hang around. It's broad daylight on a West Hollywood street. He was right. A squeal of tires signaled the departure of the shooters, just as police sirens sounded in the distance. People emerged, rising from the pavement, hurrying out from their cover, and congregated on the street staring at the fast-disappearing vehicle. A few watchers pulled out their phones and filmed the car, others made hurried calls, while several women sobbed in relief. "You're okay, sir?" Bear asked softly. His principal nodded, too scared to speak. "We should stay back. Give a statement to the cops. Those shooters were for us." "No," the principal found his voice finally. "No cops. Those men found us even here. I don't trust the cops." He's right, Bear thought grimly, as he helped the principal rise and bundled him into the vehicle. "Your ride is sure ruined, man." A black man broke away from the throng on the street and bent down and fingered a hole in the vehicle. "They weren't after you guys, were they?" "Nah. The only one shooting at me would be my wife." Bear forced a chuckle and climbed into the SUV and eased away slowly. The first cruiser was rolling to a stop at the shooting site, just as he turned at the light on Sunset Boulevard and sped towards Hollywood Heights. Hollywood Heights was where their hotel was, but Bear had no intention of returning there. He would find another hotel, check the two of them in under false names, and only when the principal was safe in his room would he allow himself to relax. "I am relaxed." Instead, there were worse moments. Especially that one time with Carter. Afghanistan. It was where Bear had come close to discovering what death was. It was where he had met Carter. And Captain Chloe Sundstrom. The nervous fluttering started deep in his belly, the way it usually did when she came to mind. Not now, he brushed the thought away. There was no point in dwelling on the past or what could have been. Now was the time to focus on his principal and make sure that both he and Bear survived the next few days. The principal was one Raff Cardovo. At one time he had been an important man in the Los Angeles Zetas, a criminal gang who had a firm grip on the underbelly of Los Angeles. Drugs, killing, prostitution, money laundering, extortion, you name it, they had a hand in it. The Zetas were in decline, with their founder Carlos Simca serving a long spell. However, that was about to change. Simca was due to be released in a week, and he had vowed a brutal revenge on all the snitches, all the cops, and the judges who had played a role in his incarceration. And that's where Cardovo came in. Cardovo had been the Zetas' bookkeeper. He knew everything there was to know about the money side of the gang. He had turned witness, and it was his testimony that had put away Simca. However, it turned out that he hadn't revealed all that he knew. He had held back on a few murders that he had seen Simca commit. The thought of a free Simca coming after him scared him, and he had come forward with new evidence, lots of it, that could send Simca back to prison. He had approached the LAPD, who had danced a jig in delight, and they had arranged a secure house for his deposition. The Zetas had struck the evening of the first day of deposition. They had arrived in 2 jeeps and had opened fire indiscriminately on everyone around the house. They had crashed through the metal gates, had driven up the drive gunning down cops, and entered the house. A couple of fast-thinking cops had bundled Cardovo in a cruiser and had escaped from a rear exit that not many knew of. The house had once belonged to a movie star and had secret entrances and getaway routes that the actor had built to escape the media vultures. 7 cops were killed in that attack. 3 civilians were dead. And Cardovo had lost faith in the LAPD. He stayed, unwillingly, in the hotel room the LAPD arranged for him, and reached out to a network of people who knew other people. And that's how Bear arrived at the hotel the next day, met and took him away. It was Bear's job to ensure Cardovo lived to depose. The LAPD had protested. It was highly irregular that a private contractor be solely responsible for a witness's security. Cardovo was adamant it was his way or the highway. It was either Bear or there would be no testimony. He made further demands once Bear had checked them into one of those anonymous hotels Los Angeles was famous for. Bear took charge in his usual style. He demanded that Cardovo surrender all his mobile devices to his protector. The principal protested. He needed his mobile. "It's my way or the highway," Bear told him straight-faced. Bear removed the batteries from Cardovo's devices and destroyed the SIM card from his phone, while the principal watched sulkily. "I hope you know what you are doing," Cardovo sniffed. "You can always find another protector, sir." Cardovo didn't offer any more protest. He wanted Bear, not anyone else. Bear then turned his attentions to the depositions. They would take place at random locations. Bear and only Bear would decide where, and he would give the LAPD an hour's notice. That too was highly unusual, the chief of police said. 2 men, in a city like Los Angeles where the Zetas had ears and eyes on every corner, they wouldn't last long. Cardovo held firm. "Bear wasn't your ordinary bodyguard," he retorted hotly. "He was a former U.S. Special Forces operative. He had an exemplary record of protecting people." The chief put up a battle, but not for long. The thing was, he knew Bear. Jeffrey Hall, chief of police of the LAPD, tall, coal-black and built like a tank, knew Bear from years past. From their army days, when the two had met in hot, dusty and dangerous lands. If there was one person who could protect Cardovo, it was Bear. Okay, Hall knew there was one other person, but that other person wasn't in Los Angeles. It was thus that Bear took on Cardovo's protection and arranged for the deposition to resume at the hotel in Hollywood. And found himself and the principal being shot at. Bear checked his mirrors as his mind raced, ignoring Cardovo's quiet whimpering. There seemed to be no one following them, but traffic was heavy and he couldn't tell. He took random turns, lefts, rights, and raced through a few red lights. With his left hand he checked that his Glock's mag was full. It was. There had been no time to return fire. Ditch the vehicle. That took priority over finding a hotel. He headed back to Hollywood Boulevard, knowing that the usual horde of tourists would slow down any followers. He cut a quick left and entered a hotel's drive. A boutique hotel that he knew well. He drove to its parking lot and went to a space in a far corner and kept watch. "What are we doing here?" Cardovo moaned. "We need to find a ride," Bear replied without looking at him. The principal was curled in his seat as if warding off a blow. An odor emanated from him, a smell that Bear knew well. It was fear. Chapter 2. A luxury car, looked like a Porsche from where they were, wheeled in and went up the driveway. A valet sprang from where he had been standing and opened the door for a suited man and an elegantly dressed woman. The valet got inside the vehicle and brought it into the lot, a few spaces from where Bear's vehicle sat. Porsche. Too conspicuous. Too much security in it. He wanted a mid-range make, an older model. A Toyota pulled up, as if on order. A dark-skinned man wearing loose jeans tossed his keys to the valet and went inside the hotel. The Toyota was silver and gleamed a little too much for Bear's liking, but he would take it. He could break into it and hotwire it. He knew how to disable its alarms. The valet parked it next to his vehicle, which made it easier. Bear cracked his door open and listened for a while. No sudden shouts. No gunshots. He slipped out and ducked beneath the Toyota's windows. Difficult for a 6'5" man, but he was practiced. 5 minutes to jimmy the window down, another couple of minutes to rip out certain cables, and then the Toyota's engine started. Another couple of minutes to turn on a device and turn off the alarm. He hustled Cardovo into the back seat and asked him to lie down so that he wouldn't be seen. Cardovo didn't protest. He asked just one question when Bear drove out of the hotel. "Won't that vehicle have your prints?" "Sir," Bear couldn't help smiling. "That's the least of our problems." Bear drove fast, heading to Studio City, where he made one more car switch at another hotel and then past Van Nuys, crossing Reseda. He made several calls while he drove, booking rooms in multiple hotels in Hollywood. He kept an eye out for cops and for tails. He didn't spot either. He neared Northridge, which was on the edge of the city, and ditched the car on a residential street. He turned on an app on his phone and found the nearest car rental outfit where he rented a Ford. Through another app, he rented an apartment from a private landlord, and 3 hours after the shooting, he pulled into the parking lot of their apartment building. He hurried Cardovo inside the 2-bedroom apartment, and while his principal was showering, he made a call to a private number. "Hall, Jeffrey Hall, Chief of Police, LAPD," answered. No hello. No hi. Those who knew him didn't need the niceties. Those who didn't would learn that Hall didn't believe in niceties. "How many killed?" Bear asked without identifying himself. "None," Hall rumbled down the line. "Thankfully. A couple of people have burns, but that's the most of it. They were aiming at you guys. It's a wonder you escaped unhurt." "What's the word?" "A gang shooting. A drive-by shooting. Cardovo isn't mentioned." "What about the DAW and the other cops?" The deposition was led by the district attorney, who had been accompanied by a couple of cops. "All safe. All protected." The city hummed when both fell silent. Bear heard a siren wail in the far distance and suddenly felt alone. He thrust the emotion away and started when he realized Hall was speaking. "You there?" Hall queried. "Yeah." "What now?" "We'll go ahead. Cardovo is determined to finish the deposition. I'll arrange another place tomorrow and let you know." "How did they know?" "I don't know," Hall growled. If frustration could burn telephone cables, the ones in his office would have melted. "I'll find out, however, and if there's a snitch in my department, he'll wish he had never been born." "You need to bring him in," he continued before Bear could respond. "We can protect him. Like you did today." "This isn't how it works, Bubba," Hall warned. "The two of you alone out there. The Zetas will find you." "They won't." Bear scratched his beard and checked if Cardovo had finished his shower. He hadn't. "You know my record." Bear hadn't lost a principal. Not in all the years of taking on close protection gigs after leaving the Army. He knew that it wasn't his reputation that had impressed Hall, however. Bear knew Carter and had served with him. Hall knew Carter too. Carter had saved Hall's life many years back. The chief of police would break any law for Carter. It was that mutual connection Hall and he shared that made the chief of police trust Bear. "I'll let you know tomorrow." Bear lowered his voice when he heard the shower stop. "This time I won't give much notice. Stay safe, Bubba." "Always." The apartment was stocked with food and groceries, and while the principal dressed, Bear whipped up a quick meal for them. They ate in front of a TV on which the shooting played in an endless loop. A breathless reporter interviewed eyewitnesses, none of whom had anything new. Someone's mobile phone clip had a grainy image of the shooters fleeing in their car, which didn't seem to have plates. "That," Cardovo jabbed his finger at the screen, "was the scariest day of my life." Bear sneaked a glance at the principal, who seemed to have recovered from the day's events. His color had returned, and so it seemed his appetite. Cardovo helped himself to another portion of pasta, and wolfed it down rapidly. Surely you would have seen some nasty things when you were in the gang. You saw Simca kill those people. No one was shooting at me then, Cardovo replied around a mouthful of food. Bear made his calls once Cardovo was back in his room. The first call was to book a meeting room in Long Beach. The second was to book another room in Glendale, and the third was to book a hotel suite in Inglewood. The 2 meeting rooms were for the same time the next morning. The hotel suite was an all-day booking. He called 3 people from his past, men he trusted, and arranged for them to keep a watch at the 3 locations. He lay back on his bed once the calls had been made, went over all his arrangements, and when he was satisfied, turned off the light. Sleep didn't come immediately. Carter came to mind first. A lean man with short brown hair. A man who moved with a fluid grace that came naturally to him. A man who rarely smiled. Carter had been Bear's team leader all those years back in Afghanistan. He could still remember that one particular mission, could still smell the cold crispness of the air on the Hindu Kush mountains. Carter, he, and 2 other operatives had set out to locate a terrorist camp in the mountains. They had come within 3 miles of the camp and had sought cover in a cairn of rocks when they had been ambushed. In the ferocious fighting that followed, they had lost 1 operative. A second had been severely injured, while Bear had been shot in the shoulder. Carter and Bear had repelled the first wave of attacks and had radioed for help. They kept watch all night, knowing that the next attack could be their last. Bear remembered summoning a smile and turning to Carter. "Let's try not to die. I haven't told Sundstrom how I feel." The image of Carter was still vivid after all these years. He could smell the smoke in the air, the way the flames danced on his team leader's face. Carter's face had been drawn, and he looked fatigued, and yet there was no hesitation in his voice. "You will," he had said, and Bear had believed him. They lived through the night and survived the mission, and when they had returned to base, Bear searched for Sundstrom. He saw her at camp surrounded by her team members, and the sight of her, glowing, laughing, made him lose confidence. He hadn't told her how he felt. Not then. Never ever. Second Lieutenant Chloe Sundstrom. Bear turned restlessly in his bed, punched his pillow with a ham-like fist, but it failed to summon sleep. Chloe. Even her name did something to him. She was with the 82nd Airborne, deployed to Afghanistan, in the same camp as his. He had noticed her, petite, dark-haired, as had many other men. They surrounded her. Some courted her seriously. Some were just friendly. Bear. He lost his capacity to speak when she was near him. Her cool glances and slight smiles left him in knots. As days passed into weeks, he found out that she wasn't involved with anyone. That she was an Army brat, her father having retired as an E8 in the 101st Airborne. "I don't have anything in common with her." That was the constant refrain that went through his mind whenever she was close by. Bear came from a large family, one of 5 kids, but had fallen out with his folks. They had wanted him to be a lawyer or a doctor. They hadn't understood why he had joined the Army. He didn't try explaining to them that it was only in the Army he had found himself. No, what would I say to her? I am not funny. I can't crack jokes like Roger or Buwana. She had approached him a few days after he and Carter had returned from that mission. She had listened while he described what happened, his words halting, his face reddening under her steady gaze. She had placed cool fingers on his arm when he had finished. "I am glad you weren't harmed," she had said. Bear couldn't say anything in return, and he still burned with embarrassment when he recollected that incident. Time passed. Bear left the Army and became a private military contractor. He then became a close protection expert, a bodyguard. His size, skills, and reputation ensured that he was never out of work. He made good money. He made New York his home and bought an apartment in the city. But he never forgot Chloe Sundstrom. He kept track of her through the Armed Forces grapevine. He had met Carter once, who also had left the army. He couldn't get himself to use Carter's first name, Zeb, even though the other insisted. Carter was the same age as him, but had gone through much more of life than Bear had. Bear had heard all the stories and had seen it in Carter's eyes. No, Carter it was, not Zeb. Carter ran a security consulting firm, a successful one. Carter had listened in the quiet way he had as Bear brought him up to speed on his life. Bear didn't mention Chloe to Carter, but when Carter said, "Don't leave it too late," Bear knew exactly what Carter was talking about. He made some calls to his network and found out that Chloe too had left the army. She was still single as far as anyone knew. And she was somewhere in New York. "I'll find her when I get back. And then I'll tell her. If I stay alive." "We are not going anywhere?" Cardovo asked incredulously the next day. "No, sir. It's too hot out there." Bear wasn't referring to the weather. "But the deposition." "It can wait, sir. Let's sit out today. Maybe we'll resume tomorrow." Bear warded off all questions from his principal and escaped to his room where he waited. Waiting wasn't a problem. He was used to long hours of waiting and short bursts of intense combat. Not today. Hall was equally amazed when Bear told him there would be no deposition. "We are on a timeline, you know." "Yes, sir. But my client wants to wait a day." Hall protested, but Bear was adamant. He wasn't going to compromise his client's safety. At 8 p.m. Bear heard back from his watchers. No activity at the 3 locations. No gangs. No hitters. Nothing suspicious at all. And at 8:30 p.m. he called Hall. He'll depose tomorrow. He booked a conference room in a swanky hotel in Beverly Hills, posing as a sales rep for a well-known soft drink company. The hotel boasted excellent security, and that, along with the upscale neighborhood, would provide an initial deterrent to any attackers. Cardovo was inquisitive the next morning, wanting to know where the deposition would take place. Bear fobbed him off and briefly considered seeking more help. "Nope. My people will hang around, that will attract attention." He set out from the apartment once they had finished their breakfast, got a new pair of wheels at another rental agency, and then stole another ride. The vehicle he stole was a Mazda, aging, but its engine was good, its tires were good, and those were all that mattered. He drove around aimlessly, circling the city in ever-narrowing circles, ignoring Cardovo's whiny "I've seen the city before, I live here." At 12 p.m. he called Hall and asked him to collect the DAW and set out. Hall rang him half an hour later. "We're on the road, Bubba. Where do you want us to be?" "Where exactly are you?" "On West Olympic Boulevard. Giving the dime tour to the DAW. He's new to the city, you know." Sarcasm rolled off Hall thickly. "Not far from us." Bear hung a left on the Avenue of the Stars, turned right, and when he crossed South Beverly Drive he spotted Hall. He could make out Hall's head in the rear bobbing as he spoke to the DAW. There was a cop in the front, next to the driver. A cruiser at their rear. "Lose your tail," Bear told Hall. "You're following us?" Hall craned his neck to peer from the rear window. "Lose your tail," Bear repeated. He was 3 car lengths away and was confident neither he nor Cardovo could be spotted. On stealing the Mazda, he had installed a small camera on its roof that fed a stream of video to a screen next to him. The camera could be zoomed in or out and gave him eyes on. The cruiser peeled away after a few moments and then Hall came back crankily. "Now what?" Bear gave him random instructions and only when he was sure there was no tail, directed him to the hotel. The deposition was without event. Cardovo talking swiftly, concisely, while the DA made notes and asked the occasional question. There were just the 5 of them in the room. Hall, his trusted cop, the DA, Cardovo, and Bear. All their cell phones were on the polished oak table, their batteries and SIM cards separated. All but Bear's. Bear lounged in a corner, listening idly, his attention on any sounds outside the room. There were none. They took a comfort break when the principal grew fidgety, and when he returned, the deposition continued. 2 hours later, Bear called an end to the proceedings. He didn't want to stay too long in the hotel. "We're nearly done," the DA objected. "We just need another couple of hours." "Another day, sir," Bear replied firmly. He motioned Cardovo to rise and follow him when he heard them. The sound of rushing footsteps outside the conference room. Chapter 3. Down, Bear roared, his Glock appearing magically in his hand. He grabbed a chair with his left and as soon as the door sprang open, let it fly. The chair crashed into the first gangbanger. He went down. Another appeared. He too went down when Bear's rounds peppered him. Bear leapt over the table, hauled a body up, and thrust it out of the door. No rounds came his way. He motioned for Hall and the cop to cover him, dropped to the floor and peered around the door. The corridor was empty. Only 2 gangbangers. The rest are probably waiting at the front. An alarm went off in the hotel. A voice came through the hotel's announcement system, asking guests to stay in their rooms. That the cops had been alerted and were on their way. "To the rear," Bear whispered and got Hall and the cop to lead the way. They made their way swiftly, without encountering any hostiles. Through to the rear parking lot, where Hall commandeered a vehicle for his people. Bear grabbed a SUV's keys off another guest, ignored his protests, and showed his Glock when the guest became aggressive. "Inside. Get to the floorboards," he said tersely to the principal. The lack of more shooters worried him. The Zetas wouldn't send just 2. Unless those 2 were just an advance party to confirm Cardovo's presence, and the others were bunched up elsewhere. He knew Hall had the same thought, the same flash of realization in his eyes. They'll be outside the gates. Waiting. Hall had seen combat. He was cool, calm, almost as if he was enjoying being in the thick of the action. "I'll lead. I'll be the decoy." Bear ripped Cardovo's jacket off his shoulders and tossed it to Hall's cop. "Get him to wear it. Same height. It'll draw their fire." Hall's ebony face lightened briefly in a smile. He nodded it to his cop. "Great idea. Wear it, son. You'll get a medal." The decoy didn't work. The first SUV rammed into Bear's as soon as they hit Wilshire Boulevard. He struggled to control it, and from the corner of his eyes he saw another vehicle drawing level. In his mirror he saw Hall's vehicle, which had gone in the opposite direction, disappearing fast, a vehicle following in hot pursuit. A sickening crunch brought his attention back to his attackers. 3 vehicles. 2 at the rear. 1 to the right. He floored the accelerator and broke free of the one at the back, then swung the wheel hard and smashed into the vehicle to his right, just as the first shots blew holes in his windows. He didn't know which vehicle had fired. It didn't matter. "Keep down," he yelled at the principal, who squeaked in response. Bear ducked his head and kept thrusting, pushing the gangbangers right into oncoming traffic. Metal screamed and tore as a car plowed into it, and more vehicles crashed. The gangsters inside it stayed still. Maybe injured or dead. The hoods behind him retaliated by firing blindly. Horns blared, and people shouted as they dove out of the way. Wilshire Boulevard was where the wealthy came to shop, and where tourists came to gawk. It had turned into a war zone. Despite the urgency, despite all the bandits chasing him, Bear couldn't help grinning when the sleek glass front of a fashion store splintered and a couple of shoppers sprang back inside. He could imagine the spluttering rage of the women. Guns and shooting happened in neighborhoods like Westmont and Chesterfield Square. Not in Beverly Hills. "Welcome to the Zetas, babe." He twisted his wheel back, seeing a clear channel ahead, and floored it. His SUV stalled and died. Not now. He tried again, tuning out the principal's whimpers. No dice. The vehicle didn't respond. From his broken mirrors he spotted shooters exit from the rear vehicles. They fired blindly, and some of them started running. They were 20 feet away. Maybe 30. Rounds pinged off their vehicle's body as Bear searched frantically for an idea. A diversion, anything to help even the odds. Nothing struck him. He jabbed his Glock out and fired. Some of the approaching Zetas dove. Their rush slowed. Rapid change of magazine. Another burst of fire. He hit 3 shooters, more out of luck. The lane to his right was blocked because of the crash. No sign of gangbangers from that direction. Vehicles on that side lined back as far as the eye could see. People cowered inside their rides. No passers-by. They had all sought cover. Sirens were in the air, but the cruisers would take time. He didn't know where Hall was. He could take Cardovo and melt into the vehicles to his right. No sooner had the idea come to him than he acted. He reached back, opened the left rear door and poured a stream of lead. Move to the right. Open the door and run on my count to 3. Cardovo looked blindly at him. Run through the right door on my count of 3. Go through the traffic. Behind that bus. I'll follow you. It's the only chance we have. Cardovo nodded jerkily. He didn't protest. 1. Cardovo opened his door. 2. Bear started firing through the rear window. Another fast reload. 3. He and Cardovo jumped out. His eyes searching, spotting the attackers, grouping. Pointing in their direction, he shot at them and shoved Cardovo over the yellow lines. Shots came his way. He ducked. More shots. Like a rumble of thunder. Tires squealed. That didn't sound right. Bear voice. Feminine. Vaguely familiar. The thunder continued. Bear recognized it for what it was. An AR-15. In the middle of Los Angeles. He grabbed Cardovo by his shirt and stopped him, making sure they had cover behind the bus. He risked a quick glance backward. What he saw astounded him. A Hummer had backed to his stalled vehicle. A face at its driver's window narrowed in concentration as she fired burst after burst through the rear window. She. Bear blinked. His rescuer was female. And familiar. The same dark hair that had haunted him. Climb in, Chloe shouted and pointed at the passenger side door which swung open. I'll cover you. Chloe. Here. How? Later. He turned Cardovo around, pushed him towards the welcoming vehicle, firing his Glock with his left hand, and 3 steps later, he and the principal were in the safety of the Hummer. Chloe sped off before he had even shut the door. Take the AR. Use it. He took the assault rifle and fired a warning burst at the receding figures and turned back to Chloe, who held her hand up. Later, she commanded. She drove swiftly, her eyes flicking between the mirrors and the road ahead. Clear ahead, no signs of a chase. Bear looked at his watch. Less than 10 minutes had passed since the attack. Not enough time for the cops to respond, not in that kind of traffic. He checked his principal, who was trembling in shock. Unhurt, and that was more important. He turned back to Chloe, to the long, slender column of her neck, visible above her shirt collar. A few tendrils of hair escaped from the tight bun on her head. He forced his eyes away, asked his pounding heart to slow down. Pounding not because of the shootout. It was her presence. Her proximity. I'm just surprised she's here, he told himself, and deep inside knew it was a lie. Where are we going? Cardovo got his courage back. To safety, Chloe replied. She took a rapid left, then a right, blew through several traffic lights and entered a hotel's parking lot in La Brea. She leapt out, urging them on with an imperious finger, and hustled them into a Yukon. She headed out, made another vehicle change at Crenshaw, drove around for 3 hours and when night was falling, took them to a ground-floor apartment in a building near Los Angeles International Airport. Hall had called Bear while she was driving and updated him. 3 vehicles waiting for you, 2 for us. Our 2 cut us off from you. One in front, one at the rear. They just opened up with automatic rifles. Right in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard. His voice was tight, and Bear could feel the controlled rage in it. The Zetas had turned his town into a battlefield. Bear could imagine the political fallout and the media heat Hall would receive. Something similar at our end. Casualties. 1 civilian dead. Several injuries. Lot of wreckage. Who's she? Bear looked at the dark hair and the profile of the woman who had never left his mind. Someone from my past. You trust her? With my life. Chapter 4. He was at a loss for words when they entered the apartment, Chloe leading the way. A million questions vied for attention in his mind. He pushed them back. First things first. Get the principal cleaned up. Some food in him. A shower and a warm meal worked wonders on the human spirit. It was what he had learned in Afghanistan. Where I met her. Stop it, he ordered himself, and checked out the apartment swiftly. 3 bedrooms. 3 bathrooms. Neat. Clean. Sparsely furnished. He returned to the living room and saw Chloe's lips twitch. It's clean, a smile in her eyes. He knew she wasn't referring to hygiene. I checked it out before renting it. The same tradecraft he followed. You know each other. Cardovo interrupted, his eyes flicking between the two of them. Yes, sir. Why don't you shower? There's a bathroom down the hall. Towels are in the bedroom. Cardovo nodded reluctantly and dragged himself away when Bear stared at him. Chloe was in the kitchen when the shower started running. He watched her work for a moment. Quick, economical movements. That crazy thing his heart did before started again. He swallowed and helped her silently. They brought the plates to the small dining table, and when he heard the shower still running, he finally met her eyes. That small smile still played on her lips. How, he asked and hoped his voice sounded normal. Casual. As if it wasn't a big deal seeing her. Of course it isn't. Why should it matter? The smile fled her face. You remember Ahmad Zubair? He scrunched his eyebrows trying to place the name. Iraq? Nope. Syria? No. Afghanistan? Kabul, he ventured, that mission. Carter, I and 2 others, McKay and Phil. Yeah. That one. We were hunting Zubair, a terrorist. Intel placed him in a house in Kabul. We closed in on him, and in the firefight several civilians were killed. But I know, she spoke over him. It wasn't our rounds that killed the innocents, even though we were blamed at the time. Zubair's men had fired on the civilians to cause a diversion. Didn't work. We got him. Thing is, one of the civilians who died was Zubair's mother. One of the survivors was a small boy. His brother Abdul. Bear was nodding even before she had finished, knowing where she was going. Brother's sworn revenge, he guessed. He's done more than that, she replied dryly. He's killed Phil and McKay. Here, in the U.S. A couple of months back. Butchered them with a knife and wrote his name in blood. Now he's coming after me. He's coming after the 3 of us. You, me, and Carter. Does Carter know? She laughed, a sound that Bear wished he could hear all day. Carter. He probably does. He runs a security consulting business in New York. He is well connected. You came to warn me, ma'am? How did you find me? Something moved in her eyes and disappeared before he could read the emotion. I knew you were in LA through the underground network. Knew who you were protecting. It was just a matter of checking out where you could be, she shrugged, like it was no big deal. Thank you, ma'am, he said sincerely, wanting to say more, not sure how to say it. No problem, you would do the same for me, wouldn't you? I'd die for you. He bit his tongue to hold back the words, "Yes, ma'am." "You haven't dropped it, have you?" That smile again that made his heart sing and dance. "What, ma'am?" "That. Ma'am this. Ma'am that. You had it in Afghanistan. You're still at it." He looked away, not sure what to say. Raised his head when she brushed past him and picked up her bag. "So long, Bear. I'm sure we'll meet again." "You're going, ma'am?" "We will?" "Very smooth, Bear. Nicely done." "I came to warn you." "Job done." She turned to face him in the half-open door, a street lamp catching her hair and casting a halo around her. It suddenly welled up in him. "Ma'am, he stumbled and in despair blurted, "Thank you, ma'am. Good night." Her face remained still, her eyes probing as if she could read him. Her lips curved slowly as she waved her fingers. "Good night, Bear," and she disappeared into the darkness. He leaned against the door, his eyes shut, cursing himself, smiling at the same time, wondering at the miraculous meeting. "I couldn't tell her how I feel. I will, once this is over. I will find her." His eyes flew open when a throat cleared. "Cardovo." The principal looked behind him, puzzled. "She's gone?" "Yeah. I thought she was a good friend." "She's just someone I know." "Liar." Chloe blew her hair away from her face as she sat in the Hummer, away from any streetlight. It was good to see Bear. "Really? Just good?" "Not more than that," an inner voice chided her. "All right, it was very good to see him." "He means a lot to you, doesn't he?" "Yes. I think he feels the same, but the doofus can't express it." "What now?" She smiled happily in the night. "I'll have to do the chasing, obviously." "Have you seen the papers? Turned on a TV?" Hall didn't yell. Didn't shout. His rage was all the more effective because of that. He glowered at Bear and Cardovo as they sat in his office the next day. "You thought my town was the OK corral." Gone was the concern of the earlier day. A pile of newspapers lay on his desk, their headlines loud, black, and outraged. A TV was on mute on a wall. It was looping the firefight endlessly. Video coverage. Mobile coverage. Reporters interviewing witnesses. The media machine was ecstatic, they could run with this for days. Ratings would be sky high. Eyeballs would be glued to TV sets. "We were supposed to roll over and die." Bear challenged him. "You done anything about the leak in your office? How else would the Zetas know?" A vein throbbed in Hall's neck as his eyes spewed lava. A stubby finger shot out, and he pointed at Cardovo without looking at the principal. "This ends today. Here. Now. We'll finish the deposition in my office. I'll get the DA here." But Cardovo tried to object. "You don't have a say, mister," Hall overruled him. "You'll finish your deposition today. We can offer you witness protection. You can decide on that later, but no more running to different hotels. The Zetas won't attack us here. They aren't that stupid." Hall waited for Bear to protest and raised an eyebrow when none came. "You've nothing to say?" "No," Bear replied. He had come to the same conclusion as Hall. The Zetas had shown they could reach him anywhere. The LAPD's HQ was more secure than any other location. He would take their chances in Hall's office. The deposition began at 11 a.m. and continued for a couple of hours, after which Hall called for a break. Bear didn't sit in on the deposition. There was something niggling away in his mind, and he wanted the freedom to move, to let it express itself. He paced the hallways, disregarding the curious looks he got. Everyone knew him or knew of him. The media had described him as a big, bearded, savage man. The NYPD had confirmed that it knew who the man was and was investigating. Simca was crowing in his cell, boasting how his men had wreaked terror in Beverly Hills. Word got out from the prison that he would paint the city red if Cardovo didn't stop his deposition. Cardovo was scared. It showed in his face, in the way he flinched whenever a door opened behind him. However, he too was determined to complete his statement, and cooperated once the DA had arrived. "How's it going?" Bear asked the DA in the restroom during the lunch break. The DA frowned and adjusted his tie in the mirror. "Not bad. Not great either. These last 2 days, he hasn't come up with anything new. We had the same statement from Cardovo the first time we put Simca behind bars. There is some more detail, but he isn't really describing the murders. Those will put Simca away again. But our friend is tiptoeing around those killings." "Why?" The DA shrugged. "He's scared. He's now dealing with the reality of Simca's power." He put on a confident smile and patted Bear's shoulder. "We'll get there. This happens. A witness chokes. The trick is to be patient. Let them take their time. We might not finish today." "That's possible," the DA chuckled. "Hall wants everything wrapped up and buttoned tight by evening, but that's not how this works." The DA went back into Hall's office and shut the door behind him. He, Hall, Cardovo, and a couple of cops in that office with a recorder. Bear on the outside, trying to get to what was bothering him. Not succeeding since images of dark hair and a flashing smile intruded. Sparkling eyes and a deep laugh. Get a grip, he told himself, went to the water fountain and drank deeply. As the cool liquid went down his throat, a thought struck him. He went searching for a cop, one who knew him, and found Chad Garrett at a desk going through paperwork. "Say, those dudes yesterday. Any of them alive?" Garrett, a veteran of several years, looked up from beneath his bushy eyebrows. He pursed his lips and shut a file. "You mean of the ones you didn't kill?" "Kill? I was shooting blindly. If any of those hitters went down, that was sheer dumb luck." "You haven't been following the news, have you?" Garrett smirked. "Between you and your lady savior, you downed 10 hitters. That will hurt the Zetas," he said, satisfied. "The ones you shoved into traffic, those hoods are in hospital. Not in a position to talk." "Why?" "I was wondering how they knew to be there." "Aren't we all?" Garrett commented drolly and opened another file with a sigh. Paperwork. Someone had to do it. It was getting dark by the time Cardovo finished spilling everything that he could, in one day. The DA was looking much more positive when he came out of Hall's office and gave a thumbs up to Bear. "One more day. Then we're done and he's all yours." "Scratch that," Hall rumbled when he joined them. "He's going into Cal WRAP. After tomorrow." Cal WRAP, California Witness Relocation and Assistance Program, was similar to the WITSEC program run by the U.S. Marshals. He said he wanted one night of freedom. Tomorrow night. Cal WRAP takes over the day after. Tonight he's staying right here. Bear worked out details with Hall and the DA. Logistics. Start times for the next day. He wasn't surprised with Cardovo's decision. His principal had initially mentioned going his own way once the deposition was complete. The attacks must have changed his mind. Bear's deal with him was to keep him safe till then. That was nearing its end. One more night. I can live with that. He went in search of Cardovo and was struck by the man's sunken eyes when he saw him emerge from the restroom. "You're going?" Cardovo asked him forlornly. "I'll be back tomorrow." "Hall told you?" "Yeah. You want one night outside before the system grabs you." Bear grinned. Cardovo didn't share his humor. He tucked a loose shirt tail in his waistband and gazed at the exit longingly. "I shouldn't have come forward. None of this would have happened. Simca wouldn't have set his dogs loose on me." Bear kept quiet. He didn't do false sympathy. No one had forced Cardovo to come forward. He had been in the gang. He knew Simca better than most people. He knew the perils of being a snitch. It was too late to change anything. He shook Cardovo's hand and prepared to leave when the principal stopped him. "You're using the same car?" "Yeah," Bear frowned. "I'll change it tomorrow." "Why?" "No reason. I'm not thinking right." Cardovo laughed self-deprecatingly and hurried to join Hall. Bear eased into his Tahoe with a contented sigh and turned the key. He was glad to be free of Cardovo for the night. Alone with his thoughts of Chloe. He smiled, waved at the cop at the exit, and turned to join the stream of traffic which was thick and heavy even at that time of the night. Figures. It's the city of dreams. They get manufactured when everyone else is sleeping. The biker wasn't sleeping either. He came roaring from behind a bus, came next to Bear to his left and pointed a gun at him. Chapter 5. Again? Bear wheeled hard to his left and braked sharply. The first bullet burst through his window, grazed his forehead, and exited through the other window. The biker slowed immediately when Bear braked, and attempted to speed up when his shot missed. Bear was too close to him, however. The Tahoe crossed lanes and raced forward when Bear stomped the pedal. Its front fender scraped against the bike's rear and sent it careening on West 1st Street. The biker attempted to control his ride desperately as he tried to stay away from opposing traffic. Bear closed down on him, alert for more attackers. There didn't seem to be any. A bike would overtake a four-wheeler in urban traffic on any day, and the shooter was already putting distance between him and the Tahoe. Bear pursued, thankful that there weren't that many vehicles around, and when the attacker cut a left on South Olive Street, he spotted his opportunity. For a couple of moments the biker leaned in the turn, his ride dark and shiny against the backdrop of a building, his helmeted face turning towards Bear. No other cars in the line of sight. Nothing behind the biker. Line of sight was line of fire. Bear drew instinctively, aimed his Glock like a finger, knew he missed with the first round. The second didn't miss. It went through the bike's rear wheel. The third shot seemed to pierce the attacker's leg, for he jerked, lost control, and the bike fell. It slid several feet, dragging its rider along with it. Bear aimed his vehicle at the sidewalk and lunged out of it, not waiting for it to stop. He sprinted to the fallen man, keeping well away from his arms. He was aware of blood streaming down his face. Just a crease. "I've been hit harder." The biker had gotten himself free from his vehicle and was attempting to rise when Bear's kick felled him. "Freeze." Bear wasn't the one who shouted. He raised his hands and turned to see several cops pointing their guns at him and the biker. Cruisers raced up the street and blocked traffic in either direction. Above the sound of the sirens, the cops shouting, Bear heard throbbing. The sound of several engines. Bikes. 6 bikes swept past on West 1st Street, their riders turning curiously at the spectacle on South Olive Street. They didn't slow, and when a few cops looked their way, raced away. "Get their license plates," Bear yelled at the cops. "Don't move. Don't talk. Drop your gun." It was very late in the night by the time Bear was released. His graze wound had stopped bleeding, and while it itched, he resisted the urge to scratch it. Hall's eyes moved to the wound, but he made no comment, no quip. Bear liked that about the chief of police. No wasted words. It reminded him of Carter. Hall had listened silently while he gave his statement, and rubbed his chin thoughtfully when Bear had finished. Why just one biker? The Zetas like to attack in force. Those other bikers who went past were probably shooters too. The gunman was ahead of them. He probably figured Cardovo was with me and decided to shoot. The other bikers realized I was alone. They held back. Hall tossed it around in his mind for a while and shrugged. "We'll ask him." "Again. You punctured his leg, but otherwise he's not damaged." "He isn't talking though. Wants a lawyer." "None of my men took plates of the other riders. They didn't believe you." He didn't apologize. None was needed. His stubble rasped when he scratched his jaw as he made to speak and stopped himself. "What?" Bear asked. We showed the pictures of some of the Wilshire attackers to some Zeta snitches we have. They swear those dudes aren't from the gang. This biker, he isn't from LA. His English is good. Very good. But I can't place his accent. It's neutral. Bear flexed a shoulder and rose and stretched. You believe those snitches? Why would they admit the hitters were Zeta members? That accent, it could be anything. Maybe nothing. One time, a shooter came after me. Turned out he had studied a year at Yale. What happened to him? Hall asked absently. He died, Bear grinned mirthlessly and stifled a yawn. Zetas. Not Zetas. I don't care. Just one more night and Cardovo's all yours. Where is he? Hall pointed in the direction of the hallway outside his office. In an empty office. Snoring like he hasn't a care in the world. Well, he doesn't, does he? This time Bear's grin was genuine. He's got the LAPD protecting him. Bear spent the rest of the night in the headquarters, curled up on a shabby couch in a cubicle. The springs protested at his weight, but they held. He rose and freshened in a bathroom when day broke and brought with it a change of shift. His Tahoe was back in the parking lot, driven by some cop. He considered taking a cab or renting another vehicle. Decided against. They seem to know where I am at any time. What good will another vehicle do? He drove back to the apartment Chloe had rented, and in its emptiness, he removed his shoes and clothes. He inspected his footwear first, running a knife through the soles and splitting them. No tracking device. Vibram soles. Nothing else. He turned to his clothing. Nothing in the seams, linings, or the pockets. He fingered the plastic buttons on his shirt and wondered if they could have any device in them. I'm being paranoid. No one was near my clothing or my shoes. Nevertheless, he crushed the buttons. He ripped the plastic off a new pair of trousers and donned them. A linen shirt went over his broad shoulders. New socks and new shoes completed his attire. He made some calls, returned the SUV, and rented another vehicle from another agency. He had been in reactive mode all along, ever since he had taken the assignment. It was time to ask questions. Time to check out what Hall had said. He drove downtown and went to a storage provider, one of those that rented out lockers. He went to his stainless steel box and removed a duffel bag. It was heavy and clinked dully as he swung it over his shoulder. The bag contained spare handguns, mags, a hunting knife, and various other handy tools. Next stop was Vermont Alley, specifically a 2-mile strip that bordered Westmont and Vermont Vista, a stretch that was also known as Death Valley. It had one of the highest concentrations of crime, a lot of it murder, in Los Angeles. Bear drove up in his battered Ford, a car he had specifically chosen for its dilapidated look, and parked just off the avenue and proceeded to an apartment complex on West 92nd Street. He looked back at the Ford and wondered if he would see it intact when he returned. Wheels and hubcaps had been known to disappear in the neighborhood, which was why he had chosen a sad-looking vehicle. The apartment complex, a glorified term for a pale 2-floor building that looked like a box, was said to house one Enrique Gomez. Gomez was a senior gangbanger in the Zetas and was known to be close to Simca. It was rumored that he ran the gang by proxy for the imprisoned leader. One of the calls Bear had made had been to an informer in the gang whom he had cultivated. That informer had made more calls and had reluctantly come back with Gomez's whereabouts. If it's so easy to find out where Gomez is, Bear had asked in bemusement when the informer had given him the address, why haven't the cops acted? You stupid man, the snitch had laughed scornfully. You got that address only because you saved my life that one time. Anyone else asks for the address, he's a dead man. What are the cops going to collar Gomez for? For knowing Simca, the snitch snorted. Bear stepped aside to let a mom, her young daughter in tow, pass him on the narrow stairs. He was heading up, she was going down, the young girl looking round-eyed at him. White men weren't often seen in the neighborhood, let alone in the building. White men of his size were even rarer. The mother too paused on the landing and turned to look back at him, but didn't say anything, Maybe it was his size. Or the obvious bulge underneath his linen jacket. Gangbangers lounged in the hallway as he approached Gomez's apartment. They stared at him, red-eyed, their saggers coming to their knees, their handguns visible. "You lost, white boy," one of them taunted him. A ripple of laughter spread through the corridor. Hoods gathered around him and in front of him, forcing him to halt. "He's got a nice tight ass," another sniggered. More laughter. It died when a gangbanger thrust forward and eyed him. "You got business here, man? Or you a tourist?" the hood questioned Bear with authority. "Maybe someone close to Gomez." "I'm here to see Gomez," Bear returned his stare. The trick was not to show fear. That came easy to Bear. Walking into a Zeta stronghold was a piece of cake, compared to storming a terrorist cell in the Hindu Kush Mountains. "Gomez? There's no one here by that name. Turn your tail and get lost, white boy. He'll kill you if he finds out you didn't let me pass." A split second of silence followed, and then curses rang out and guns were reached for. The hood held his hand up and quietened the gangsters. "You talk tough, white boy. Is there any bite behind that bark?" Bear went closer, intruding in the gangbanger's personal space, keeping eye contact. "Easy enough to find out. Remember this. Your men might kill me. But I'll get you first. Then Gomez will kill the rest of you." "Who are you, white boy?" Bear grinned. It wasn't a smile he used on friends. "I'm the one you are hunting. I am Cardovo's protector." A babble of voices broke out, silenced by the raised hand again. "We want Cardovo dead. But we ain't hunting you, white boy." The hood came to a decision, and at a secret gesture, the men behind him parted to let him and Bear pass. He knocked on a door, and when a voice answered, opened it, and let Bear enter. 3 men were sprawled on a long couch, watching a soap on TV. One man in the center raised his eyebrows. "What's up, homie? Who's the ass?" "White boy says he's Cardovo's man. That we gunning for him. He wanted to meet you." The hood tossed the remote to another man and rose. He was lean, tattooed, and carried a permanent sneer on his face. "That true, dude? You wanted to meet Gomez?" "Gomez. In the third person. Like he's royalty. Maybe he is, in this neighborhood." "Yeah. I'm Bear. You want to kill me. Here I am." The Zetas didn't kill Bear. They didn't even hurt him. Gomez heard him out and made more calls. "Maybe I should just plug you," he drilled Bear with his eyes while he waited for a call to be returned. "You can try. You act tough, white boy." "I am tough." Gomez turned his head and listened when his phone rang and grunted once. "Sorry, dude. We ain't responsible." His lips rose to display yellow teeth. "That's the right word? Responsible? We saw all that going down on TV, but we didn't do it. Simca didn't order it. He ordered the first hit on that house. But the cops hit back hard. Simca asked us to lie low after that." "None of those gangbangers were yours?" "No." "Why are you telling me all this? So freely?" Gomez laughed loudly. "You've got cojones, white boy. Simca likes that." The laughter disappeared as quickly as it had come. "You don't know Simca, boy. Once he comes out, this city will burn. Cardovo will die. We'll get him our way. Not like this. Shooting in the street. It's bad for business. Simca is smart. He is a businessman. Protect the business first. Cardovo," he snapped his fingers. "Tell him he's a dead man walking." Gomez flicked his hand insolently. "Get going, white boy. Before I change my mind." The gangbanger's laughter followed Bear as he left the apartment building. Gomez was telling the truth, Bear concluded, as he wolfed down a burrito and drained a bottle of soda. No reason for him to lie. Hall was onto something. Who are these attackers? Several phone calls and meetings later, with various snitches and people who worked on the dark side, Bear was no closer to finding the truth. He thought of letting Hall know, but decided against it. He didn't know if the LAPD was compromised and didn't want to show his hand. At 6 p.m. Hall texted him. "All done. Collect your package." The DA was beaming, and Hall was nearly smiling when Bear reached the LAPD headquarters. "Take Cardovo. Show him the sights. Whatever he wants. Bring him back tomorrow." The chief of police waved a hand at the principal. "He's done good today." "We're staying in the same apartment your friend rented?" Cardovo seemed to be eager, excited, when he joined Bear in the Ford. "Yeah. So far no one has attacked us there," Bear chuckled. "What do you want to do first?" "Nothing. Let's head back. I want to go to the top of the building. To the roof. Look at the stars. Tomorrow will be a new day. I'll be free." "You are free now, sir." A fleeting expression crossed Cardovo's face, and his lips tightened when Bear looked in his direction. He kept silent while Bear drove back and hastened to the door when Bear stopped in the parking lot. Cardovo flipped through TV channels aimlessly while Bear laid out a simple meal for them. "You okay if I shower first?" Bear asked him. "Go ahead." Bear felt like a new man when he came out, toweled himself dry, and went to the living room. He stopped short when he saw it was empty. "Cardovo." No reply. The principal wasn't in the kitchen, nor was he in the bedrooms. Bear drew his gun and checked the apartment again. No Cardovo. "I didn't hear any noise. No shots. No yelling. If they grabbed him, it was the quietest operation I've seen. Whoever they are." He raced to the front door and hurled himself sideways and crouched when it opened. Cardovo stepped through and stopped abruptly when he saw Bear's Glock pointed at him. "Where have you been?" Bear rasped, motioning for the principal to shut the door. "A walk," Cardovo stammered. "Just a walk. I wanted some fresh air." "You should have told me before going. You are still in danger. People are still gunning for you. No need to tell him about the Zetas. That's something I'll bring up with Hall." "I'm going to shower," Cardovo replied sullenly and slammed the bathroom door behind him without waiting for Bear's reply. Bear filled dinner glasses with water and waited for Cardovo. The principal was taking an unusually long time. He was usually a quick bather. Maybe he wants to show how angry he is. Bear could wait. He turned on the TV and turned it off when no program was of interest to him. In the quiet of the apartment, only the beating of water in the shower was audible. Until something buzzed. Bear patted his pockets and brought out his phone. It wasn't buzzing. He looked around puzzled, trying to locate the source. There was no other phone in the apartment. Cardovo's cell was dismantled and in his duffel. He double-checked. Yeah, it was there. Battery. SIM card. Nothing buzzing. He went to the first bedroom. The sound wasn't coming from it. The second bedroom was Cardovo's. The buzzing grew louder and seemed to come from the bed. Bear grew uneasy. He cocked his head. The shower was still running. He approached the bed, removed a pillow, and there lay a vibrating phone. He looked at it in disbelief. He was sure there had been no other cells in the house. He checked twice every day. He had checked on entering the house. Where did this one come from? The cell stopped buzzing and its screen flashed, signaling a text message. Bear picked up the cell and thumbed a button to bring up the text. "We are coming. Be ready." He frowned, thinking hard. A shock coursed through him when that thing that had been nagging burst forth as if on cue. The jigsaw fell into place. Now it all made sense. The attacks. Gomez's denial. The hitter's utter disregard for civilian casualties. He whirled to the door at a sound. Dropped his hand away from his Glock at what he saw. Cardovo, pointing a gun at him. You figured it out too late. Chapter 6. Gone was the harmless-looking man whose appearance had suited his bookkeeping job. The man holding the gun was still stocky, still with thinning hair, but his eyes were cold, his mouth was drawn tight, unsmiling. I am Abdul Zubair. I know, Bear cut in. You have been hunting me. Zubair regarded Bear curiously. How did you know? There was nothing on that phone. I knew I made a mistake by leaving it there, but I figured. His voice trailed off as he straightened. That woman. Your lady friend. She told you. There was no one else you spoke to. I listened to every call of yours, even at night, when you thought I was sleeping. I crept next to your room and listened. No one but she could have warned you. He looked away, thinking, a far-off expression on his face. Yes, she was there, he whispered, almost to himself. My people said there was a woman with you that day. I knew the names of all of you but her. I asked a lot of people, but no one knew who she was. It could only be her. He came closer, circled Bear as if he was a piece of meat, and stood in front of him. He struck without warning, laying the barrel of his gun on Bear's temple. Viciously. Bear rocked with the blow but didn't stagger. He felt his skin split and blood stream down the side of his face. Zubair watched a drop fall on Bear's shoulder and touched it with a finger. He held it to the light and scrutinized it, as if it was a laboratory specimen. Call her, he whispered. I have been hunting her too. Call her, he screamed, showering Bear with spittle. Never. I can't, Bear answered truthfully. I don't have her number. You lie, Zubair screamed and rained blows indiscriminately on Bear's face. A wicked glancing blow opened the wound in his temple and sent him into darkness. He was secured to a chair when he came to. His head throbbed as if a million hammers were beating inside. He shook his head to clear them and groaned at the sudden movement. It drew Zubair's attention, who crouched in front of him and forced his chin up. You're awake. Good. Now we can begin. Begin what? Bear gazed blearily at his captor. Zubair wasn't alone anymore. There were 5 more men in the room, all of them armed with automatic rifles. They were relaxed, some of them murmuring among themselves. Afghani Americans, Zubair said proudly, reading Bear's gaze. Afghanis first. The most feared fighters in the world. You know, no one conquered Afghanistan. The Russians came. The British. Americans. They all came. They occupied us briefly. But they all went back with their tail between their legs. My people, he gestured grandly at the 5 men, they are the ones who attacked you. I know you have a lot of questions. I will answer all of them. But first, call the woman. I can finish this off in one night. It has been a long hunt. It's time to end. Bear didn't reply. You are the strong type, aren't you? Zubair chuckled. He's strong, isn't he? He asked his men, who agreed. But for how long? Everyone talks in the end. You will call her. It might take some time, but I am in no hurry. He flicked his fingers and a man brought forward a leather case. Bear had seen such cases before, in Afghanistan. They were used by barbers who packed their implements in them and stropped their razors on the leather. Zubair opened the case to reveal razors of various kinds. Long blades, short ones, curved as well as straight ones. There was a pair of pliers. A needle. A large knife whose edge had been polished to a fine edge. That one, Zubair pointed to the knife. I used that one to cut Phil and McKay's heads. It was good. They made a lot of noise. They died slowly. My mother also died slowly. Did you know that? We didn't kill your mother. Bear didn't flinch at the sudden outburst. Don't show fear. Make him talk. Your men opened fire on civilians. They killed your mother. Your government investigated the incident, and they were satisfied that we were not responsible. They were UN inspectors. They too reported the civilian deaths were by your people. Lies. They are all lying. Let's see how long you continue lying, Zubair hissed, and cut a sliver of skin on Bear's cheek. Bear didn't know how much time had passed. He knew he was bleeding from several cuts on his face and on his arms. Zubair had gotten around to talking about himself, proudly. How he had fled to America when he was young. Smuggled into the country, along with several other migrants. He had grown up on the streets of Los Angeles, and joining the Zetas had come naturally for a boy used to crime and killing. He had a natural affinity for numbers, and that had elevated him to the bookkeeper's role. He started siphoning funds from the Zetas, and used that to locate the operatives who had killed his brother. Simca had discovered the misappropriation, and terrified for his life, Zubair had gone to the cops. With Simca behind bars, Zubair had gone back to his vengeance mission. Years passed, but Zubair didn't give up. He traveled all over the country, meeting military personnel, posing as a former soldier. He greased palms and bribed officials, and finally located Phil in New York and McKay in Texas. He killed them, and when he returned to Los Angeles, discovered Simca's likely release. He put his personal mission on hold, and went back to the cops with evidence. It was in the police HQ's corridors that he heard about Bear. A couple of cops had been discussing a Hollywood star who had a former operative for close protection. Zubair made further inquiries and couldn't believe his luck when he discovered that man was Bear. It helped that Zubair's life was genuinely at risk. The Zetas hid on the LAPD's secure house, made it easy for him to sell his story to people who knew other people. The story reached Bear, and everything fell into place once he accepted. He bought a phone when Bear left him alone, and used it to inform his Afghani shooters every time Bear arranged a deposition. It was only Bear's quick thinking and fast reflexes that saved him each time. His men couldn't attack the apartments they were holed up in. That would have been too suspicious. That woman, Zubair admired his handiwork, and wiped the blade on the soft leather. The floor was splotched with blood and the room stank of sweat, but Zubair didn't seem to notice. He was in his private universe talking, cutting Bear every now and then, screaming at other times, demanding that he call the woman. I will kill her slowly. The way she came to your rescue, he shook his head and clicked his tongue in admiration at Chloe. Such a woman should not die quickly. Get her here. This time the blade cut deep in Bear's shoulder, making him yell hoarsely. I can go all night like this, Zubair crooned softly like a lover. Make it easy for yourself. Once she's here, I'll finish you quickly. Bear knew he would break. His mind was already starting to drift. He had to make an effort to anchor it and stay conscious. He had tried his bonds several times, but there was no give in them. The chair appeared weak, however. Maybe it would break if he flexed his muscles. He couldn't lose any more body strength for that to work. And he needed a distraction. You talk big when you have men behind you, he taunted Zubair, forcing himself to speak normally. And you call yourself an Afghani warrior. Warriors? He scoffed at the armed men. You are just cowards. You had so many chances and yet you couldn't kill me. One man. You couldn't get one man. He laughed harshly. Zubair and his men froze for a moment, and then one of the hoods rushed forward with an indistinct curse. Zubair sent him back with a look. Let him talk. He will die soon. What does he know of Afghans anyway? Bear scraped his chair closer to his captor and thrust his face forward. You are not a warrior. You are nothing. That woman, she's a real warrior. You are lucky she's not here. She would kill you before you blinked. Did you see how she opened up on your men? One woman bested your Afghani warriors. Shame on you, Bear spat. The words struck home. They pierced Zubair's ego. He growled in rage and scrabbled for his leather case. He withdrew the large knife and jabbed it at Bear, just as a shot sounded. The Barrett's round pierced through the apartment's wall as if it was made of paper. It punched through one of the hoods, blew a hole through him, and embedded in the wall behind. Bear moved without thinking, his body reacting before his mind had processed the development. He hurled himself back and the chair toppled. He gritted his teeth and flexed, trying to break the chair's legs. Zubair reacted faster than his men. He turned back to Bear, grasped what his victim was trying to do, and with a thin scream lunged with the knife. The second round missed Zubair by an inch. It blew back a second Afghani shooter and made Zubair hesitate. The distraction was all that Bear needed. He roared and strained and one leg broke. He kicked free and lashed out at Zubair, who stumbled back. Bear fell to his side. The shooters recovered and two of them unlimbered their weapons. Bear rolled desperately, trying to free his second leg. "One more shot, please, one more." The unknown shooter obliged. A third hitter went down, but now, Zubair and the two remaining Afghanis were readying to counterattack. "He's mine," Zubair howled and pounced on Bear, his knife slashing. Bear evaded the first thrust, his movement constrained by the chair's remains. He dove awkwardly at Zubair, going beneath his knife arm, and brought the man down. Zubair snarled and twisted away, jabbed an elbow in Bear's face and got to his feet swiftly. His knife came sweeping low and deadly and halted swiftly when Bear rose. The chair's back was still strapped to his body. It became a weapon when Bear swung around and crowded Zubair with its frame. Zubair wasn't done. He wove, ducked and slashed, and his knife pierced Bear's thigh from behind. He withdrew it quickly and grinned maniacally at the sight of blood on steel. "Focus on him," Bear reminded himself as he turned to face his assailant. "Forget the other shooters. Zubair exists. You exist. You should live." He was conscious of the other hitters shooting blindly before his training kicked in. The room grayed out, and all that remained was Zubair in front of him. He feinted, and when Zubair stepped back, followed through, sweeping his leg up wickedly fast. Zubair slashed at it and tore through fabric and skin. Bear compartmentalized the searing pain. His blow slammed into the bookkeeper like a tree trunk. Zubair went down but didn't lose his knife. Bear jumped on him and twisted his head just in time as the knife sailed past his neck. He headbutted the bookkeeper, whose nose broke. Zubair retaliated and slashed across his chest, deeply. Bear smashed with his head again and got a tortured groan from the Afghani. Bear settled his weight on Zubair, partially immobilizing him. Trying to finish the fight quickly, knowing that his own strength was draining, his vision was dimming. He twisted his body and slammed his shoulder into Zubair's chest. His muscle joint and the chair's back crashing into the fallen man. Zubair wasn't done. He jabbed, and Bear couldn't hold back the cry when the knife dug inside his shoulder. "Ignore. Repeat." He slammed again. Thought he felt a crack. "Not from me. From him." Again. A headbutt that blinded Zubair. Another shoulder slam. The knife thrust repeatedly on his shoulders and chest but didn't pierce deep. The Afghani was losing power. Bear poised for another slam when a voice yelled, "Stop. Get off him." It was one of the shooters, his gun pointed at Bear's head. Bear didn't get off Zubair. He held the shooter's eyes and flung his upper body on the bookkeeper. "Kill me." He didn't know if he uttered the words aloud. It didn't matter. "I will kill him before you get me." "Stop." Slam. "You'll go after Chloe, will you?" "I will shoot." Slam. "You'll kill her slowly, will you?" The shooter's finger whitened. Bear's vision started turning dark. Just once more. One last body slam. He will die. Chloe will live. He drew his breath. Something moved behind the shooter. A figure. Too far away for Bear to make out. Or maybe he was too far gone. No matter. He poised his body. Urged his muscles to do one last bidding. Another figure appeared. Someone seemed to shout. The shooter seemed to turn. Someone fired. Yet another shot. Then Bear was falling. His body, a hammer as it smashed into Zubair. "I will die for her." And Bear died. He woke to silence in a white room. Just him on a bed, no one else. Bandages and strappings all over his chest. Something that felt like stitches on his face. His thigh plastered. He tried to remember what had happened, but other than slamming into Zubair, he had no recollection. He turned his neck and winced. Nothing else in the room. It looked like a hospital room, but there was none of the hustle on the outside. The silence was deep and comfortable. So I didn't die. He slipped back into sleep on that thought. There were 2 people in the room when he awoke. One was Chloe, looking gloriously radiant, her hair loose and swinging freely, a small smile on her lips. He thought his heart couldn't take any more, but he was wrong. It started pounding at the sight of her, and he feared she might hear it. He recognized the other man immediately. Carter. Here. How? Why? Wait, didn't I see 2 figures before I blacked out? Chloe and Carter? Bear, Carter smiled a rare smile. When someone points a gun at you, it's a good idea to do what he says. Bear flushed and attempted to sit upright. I wasn't. I couldn't. He floundered and stopped talking. He hoped Carter could read his eyes. See that he couldn't let Zubair live and be a threat to Chloe. He couldn't say that, not in her presence. Carter seemed to understand. You are very lucky. And have the constitution of an ox. Your cuts, even the deep ones, will heal. No vital organs damaged. Zubair? Bear asked. He's dead. You may not remember, but you killed him. The Zetas won't be a problem either. His testimony will send Simca back. You spoke with Hall? Bear ventured. Yeah, I spoke with Jeffrey. You are good. Chloe too. Jeffrey, not Hall. Shows how close Hall and he are. How did you find me? Bear asked both of them. I knew Zubair was hunting us. It took me a while to work out Cardovo was Zubair. Jeffrey told me about Chloe. I called her. He gestured as if to say Chloe would fill the rest in. Thank you, Carter. Bear said gratefully. Zeb. It will be Zeb from now on. In any case, I was looking after my interests. Bear looked at Chloe, who was equally mystified. Your interests, they echoed at the same time. I need you. Both of you. I work in a covert unit called the Agency. I am putting together a team of the best operatives to work with me. I want you in my team. Think it over and let me know. No thinking required, Chloe answered quickly. We're in. We? Carter asked quizzically. Bear doesn't get a say? Yes, we. Nope, he doesn't. Carter looked at her for a long time and smiled slowly, his eyes turning warm. I guess he doesn't. It's been a long time coming. Get him well and get to New York soon. What did he mean by that? Bear asked hesitantly when Carter left. Something about a long time coming. Chloe came to him and grasped his hand. Hers was warm and soft. Heaven, Bear thought. Maybe I am dead. Her lips curved as if she knew what he was thinking. You will die for me, huh? Bear turned red, flustered. How did you? You were yelling. Even the neighbors could hear. Bear turned his eyes away from her steady gaze and those lips. What did he mean? She bent over him, so close that he could see the flecks in her eyes and feel her hair sweep over his face. It means, she breathed softly, that you and I are going on a date. The end.